What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to basketball, and more importantly, welcome back to our season preview series, the series where we're diving into all 30 NBA teams before the start of the regular season. We have a bunch of different things to cover in these videos, from team goals to their offseason. We're going to do a comprehensive roster breakdown, make some mock trades, go through rotational and lineup data, all with this coming to a point where we're going to predict where they're going to finish this season. In this video, we've got the Miami Heat, a team that's always somewhat relevant in the NBA. They just never seem to be able to go away, and they've got a really interesting roster going into this season, so I'm really looking forward to breaking it down. Hope you guys are ready for it, but before we do that, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, and comment. I've responded to every single comment to my YouTube channel up to this point, and I intend to keep on doing so. This is episode 3 of the season preview series at the time of recording this, which is Sunday. None of them have been uploaded yet, but there should be 2 other videos for you guys to watch, should you want. We covered the offseason pretty extensively, even did some FIBA film breakdowns, some Summer League breakdowns, so there's plenty of content for you guys to jump into, and I'm hoping that this series does well. Y'all go share it with some people, blow it up, because I'd like to do it every single year. And if the numbers are good, then the numbers are good. But anyway, let's start talking about the Heat. Alrighty, so that brings us back to our season preview spreadsheet. For those of you new to the channel, I like to build these spreadsheets to kind of help tell the story of like whatever it is I'm talking about on my YouTube channels. I've built a lot of these sheets before. By the time you guys are seeing this, there will be a link on my Discord for you to actually go download this sheet should you want it. I'll be updating it all the time. It'll just be in the announcements. There's an update. Get out of here. But it'll just be in the announcements channel on the Discord. The Discord is in the link in the description. It's free. Go have fun with it. It should be a cool tool for you guys to use to keep yourselves busy. But anyway, Miami Heat. Let's go to this kind of intro tab. We like to use this as a way to kind of talk about like, hey, what did the season look like last year, and where are we kind of trying to go right now? The Miami Heat. I know that there's certain people on the internet, because for whatever reason the internet gives a voice to a lot of people who just don't know what the fuck they're talking about ever, who get a little bit sick of hearing like, oh, Heat culture this, Heat culture this. Look, y'all, some franchises are just better than others, and the way that you establish like good business is a lot of times through your culture. Heat do kind of, the Heat have that. They're constantly one of the best teams in the NBA, and I know that Heat fans sometimes get frustrated because they're not in a better standing in the NBA. Like right now, it seems like they're kind of somewhere in the middle of things, but you don't turn off culture. That's not what you do, and that's not what they have done. This team's had probably more success over the last 25 years than maybe any other NBA team. It's probably like what them and the Spurs, but even then the Heat have just been consistent through the whole time. They keep finding their way back to NBA finals despite who's on the team. And last year was an interesting season. Obviously the Jimmy Butler saga kind of took place. Another instance where Jimmy Butler just didn't really want to be somewhere anymore. They kind of got stuck between a rock and a hard place of the Godfather, Pat Riley, just kind of being like, no, like we're not just going to do what you want. And Jimmy Butler being like, I've done all I can for this team. I don't want to be here anymore. I want to go somewhere else. Fair enough, right? It took its toll on the team for a little bit, and they ended up moving him. They got some solid basketball players back, but obviously nothing as good as Jimmy Butler was, right? But as per usual, the Heat were able to kind of claw their way kind of towards the playoffs and try to fight as much as they could, but ultimately there just wasn't really enough talent on the team to really go anywhere. But as per usual, they discovered some interesting players and kind of built out some of their own foundational key pieces to the team. And we also saw a season where Tyler Hero made his first All-Star team, which is really, really cool. A guy that kind of continues to grow in his role and is becoming one of the better just offensive players in the NBA. You still got guys like Bam on the team and some interesting young pieces, so should be another interesting season for the Miami Heat. Last year, record of 37-45. Again, a lot of kind of things going on here. Then we have our franchise status here. For those of you new to the series, I've got a couple different statuses you can be. Selling, meaning that you're kind of trying to tear a team down because it just didn't work. There's rebuilding, meaning you're kind of trying to find those pieces that are going to be the base of your team. Growing, meaning you found that base and now you're kind of trying to turn into a contender. Contending, which is where I've got the Heat, and we'll talk about that. And then we got who the fuck knows, because there's definitely going to be some teams that fall into that category. The Miami Heat are always contending. That is their attitude. There's a couple teams in the NBA that are known to kind of always be wanting to win basketball games. It's them, it's the Indiana Pacers, and the Utah Jazz. A lot of people are starting to think that the Clippers are kind of adapting this attitude as well, where they're like, look, we're always trying to win basketball games. There's no other objective besides that. Now, do they sometimes swerve a little bit? Like the Utah Jazz are very much of the mentality, like, look, we're Utah, nobody's ever just going to come and play for us. We kind of have to get bad draft picks so that we can build things up the correct way, but we're telling our guys, like, every game is important to win. We're just not putting a great roster out there right now. The Miami Heat, they don't tend to do that, even to the frustration of their own fans at times, who probably just want them to bottom out because they want to play in the lottery or whatever. Heat fans, I promise you that's not what you want. You guys have had so much success because of the way that you guys do things, and I know that you don't have a ring to show for it in the last, 10 years. Oh, you boo-hoo. But, no, there's a reason that you guys are so good at what you do. Just let your team kind of do what they need to do to try to find their way back to the promised land. It really wasn't that long ago that y'all were in the finals. Again, you don't have Jimmy anymore, but it's a thing. Goals that I have for the season: maintain the culture. We just talked about it. This should always be their number one goal. Just keep doing what they do. Work your ass off. Next man up kind of things. Doing things the right way. That's just Heat culture type of basketball. They're always going to find somebody that's going to step up and become a big player for them. It's just how it tends to go for them. So maintaining the culture, there it is. Next thing, establish ball handling duties. Last year, one of the main struggles this team had was they just did not have a reliable point guard that they could really go to for a better chunk of the season. Terry Rozier was a little bit rough, to say the least. I think Heat fans are pretty ready for him to be off the roster. And look, yeah, he's been not so great or whatever. And they didn't really have anything after that. They picked up a Davion Mitchell at one point or at some point during the year. That was good. And they also went and drafted a Yakachonis now. So you got a couple people at point guard that should be in the rotation that should be able to kind of help you out. And you brought in a couple other ball handlers that we'll talk about later. But we definitely want to kind of figure out what that rotation is going to look like and who's going to play with who, what's going to be best for different lineups. So now that you've kind of addressed that problem, it's time to start figuring out how to actually work it. And then the last thing I kind of have here is figure out Bam's offensive role, because I think Bam used to have such an interesting role in a Miami Heat offense just a couple of years ago when they kind of introduced people to hub-style offense, which is still one of my favorite, if not my favorite type of offenses to run in the NBA. And they've kind of gotten away from that. And again, less talent. Bam has to do a little bit more, right? But I want to figure out, what is Bam's night-to-night role now, especially since he might be playing a slightly different position at times this year, not just being the all-time center for the team, which I don't really like or dislike. He's still going to play a lot of center, don't get me wrong. It's just, okay, how are we kind of using this person? How do we get into a certain flow or whatever? I'm sure the Heat are going to figure it out, but it's going to be a thing. So let's keep these goals in mind as we go throughout the rest of the video, and we're kind of forming opinions as to where we think they should be by the end of the season. But with all that being said, let's talk about what their offseason looked like, because it was a pretty interesting one. Alrighty, the off-season. If you guys have been watching this series up to this point, or you just watched the series last year, because again, we had this series last year, wherever it was. Yeah, it was right here, the NBA season preview series. You guys are probably familiar with this tab. Basically, I've got 3 different categories of things that happen during an off-season. We have drafted players. Believe it or not, those are people that they drafted that are now on the full-time roster, right? Not too hard to understand. Player departures. Players that were on the full-time roster at the end of last season that are no longer going to be on the team for this upcoming season. Then we have players brought in, obviously people that were not on the full-time roster last year that are now on the full-time roster because they came from somewhere else in the NBA, or they basically just weren't drafted. Let's start at the top with Kasparas Yakachonis. If you guys followed me at all throughout last season, and I know the channel's about 3 times as big as when the off-season kind of kicked off, or when my ideal off-season series kicked off, I basically did a whole series breaking down all the top players coming into the draft this last year, because that's one of my areas of expertise, is draft analysis, or more so just prospect analysis. I'm pretty big on Yakachonis, man. I believe he was number 5 on my board, which, big boards are kind of like whatever, ultimately. But I'm like, this kid is really, really good at basketball for his age. Just barely 19 years old, a big point guard that sees the floor exceptionally well. Probably the best vision in the class, one of the better playmakers I've seen coming into the NBA in a while. He's got solid shooting form. not the biggest, not the best like athlete in the world, but has some sneaky shiftiness to him. A guy that really seems like he can be a floor general like day one in the NBA. And I actually think that the NBA game is going to be a lot better for him than the college game, just because he'll be playing with smarter people that actually know how to play like to his level of intellect. But he fell all the way to like, what pick was he, like 20 or something like that, if not more. A lot of us kind of figured he would be a top 10 pick. We thought maybe he would slip a little bit further. Me and the draft room that I was involved in, we're like, if he falls past this pick, there is a good chance that he just keeps tumbling for a little bit, and that's kind of what happened. But he ended up with the Heat, and this is another year where we look at the draft as NBA fans and we go, man, the Heat got another one. They did the same thing with Kel'el Ware the year before. We were like, oh, of course they got him. It's really going to work out for him there, and that's kind of what we're feeling about Jonas. There's a positional need for him. He's got the talent. He's got people around him that should complement his play style. I feel pretty good about Jonas coming in and having a pretty solid role right away this year. Player departures, one of them being Duncan Robinson. Unfortunately, the Miami Heat are in a situation that a couple other NBA teams find themselves in, where they're being strangled a little bit financially. The NBA has set itself up so that it has rules in place to be like, hey, if you're costing this much money, you're only going to be able to do it for so many years in a row, because compound interest kind of takes into effect for the luxury tax. The Heat just couldn't afford to pay certain people this year. Duncan Robinson was one of them, an elite outside shooter and actually a pretty good kind of secondary playmaker when after he's coming off those handoffs or pin downs or floppy actions, he's able to keep going towards the rim. He's actually just not that bad at getting to the rim then or making the next right pass. He was a nice guy for them, but unfortunately he had to get signed and traded over to the Detroit Pistons for Mr. Simone Fontecchio, who we'll talk about a little bit later. Haywood Highsmith. We didn't do a video on Haywood Highsmith because the trade itself probably wasn't big enough to garner a video, but this was one of the few I felt missteps of the Miami Heat's offseason. So Haywood Highsmith, good 3-and-D wing in the NBA, and those are pretty valuable pieces around the league. Like, that position is very highly sought after, and they basically paid the Brooklyn Nets to take him. Again, the reason being is they're trying to avoid some tax money and stuff, and trying to make sure that they can still operate a little bit business-wise. It sucks in sports when we have to do stuff like that, but there's a reason for it, right? It's for the sake of the competitiveness of the league. And they chose to move Highsmith, who I'm not going to lie, I was like, okay, I feel like we could have maybe flipped Fontecchio again, but, you know, it is what it is. But they paid the Brooklyn Nets to basically take him. Like, they gave up a draft pick as well for a guy that's a pretty positive basketball player overall. So kind of a weird move in my mind. Like, I get the business side of it, but again, Fontecchio made more money, not nearly probably as valuable, but if you were going to pay someone to take anyone, just take Fontecchio. Would Brooklyn have cared like that much? Because Brooklyn probably saw this as, so wait, we get a draft pick and we get Haywood Highsmith, who we can probably flip into even more assets. Great. That sounds awesome. Cool. We're happy about it. Kind of one of the few missteps in my mind. I know Haywood Highsmith is out for like the beginning of the season or something, but I don't know. I'd like to think that he would have come back okay, but I guess we'll see. Kevin Love and Kyle Anderson, both not huge factors in the team this last year. Both of them probably a little bit past their day. Obviously, Kevin Love back in the day, phenomenal basketball player, one of the best in the league. And then Kyle Anderson, who has kind of struggled to find like a real consistent role on any team. I feel like every time he finds his way into a rotation, he's doing something different kind of well, which is speaks as a compliment to him as well. But again, you never know what you get for sure out of Kyle Anderson. Basically, these two got traded and turned into Norman Powell in a 3-team deal that involved the Clippers. So pretty amazing trade. Honestly, they didn't have to give up like any draft capital or anything, I don't think either. They gave up two guys that probably weren't going to help them a ton this year, and they got a borderline all-star player. So pretty good, and we'll talk about him in a second. Alec Burks, another guy that just wasn't brought back, still can go get you some buckets in the NBA, and is probably going to dominate every YMCA league for the next like 20 years, because I've always said about Alec Burks, if you put him out there for 15 minutes, he will walk away with like 15 to 16 points. Defensively, there'll be some questions. He can handle the rock a little bit, but won't be on the team this year. Shouldn't be a big deal overall considering how this roster is built. Players brought in, again, Norman Powell, part of the Kevin Love, Kyle Anderson trade. We did a whole video on this one. Pretty solid trade, I felt like, all around for the teams involved. But basically, the Clippers just didn't really need Norman Powell at this point. It was more valuable for them to end up with John Collins, who they got in the trade, just because of how their depth chart is kind of situated. Norman Powell had one of the most efficient NBA seasons I've seen in a long time, especially from a two-guard. He was just kind of doing everything for the Clippers. And again, borderline all-star player. We've seen him just be a really, really solid all-around basketball player for a while, but he was really putting it together last year. Then Harden and Kawhi are back. They get to the playoffs, and Norm just isn't really able to do what he does because you're going to have the ball in Kawhi and Harden's hands all the time. They don't need him anymore. He ends up in Miami. So now you've got this kind of extra ball handler that can go generate some offense, and you were really missing that this last year. He's no slouch defensively. I'd say he's about league average, which is great. So you have a pretty powerful offensive force. He's not going to hurt you defensively at all in a system that's probably going to cater itself to him more so than the latter. So I think that it's a phenomenal pickup. Simone Fontecchio, again, part of the sign and trade for Duncan Robinson here, has had some moments in the NBA where he's been extremely valuable. Last year, not the best season for him, couldn't really find some consistency, especially on a team that needed shooting, which is something that he tends to provide. I will say some of his better moments are when he can come off and catch the ball and kind of rip towards the hoop and try to generate some offense that way, and that really wasn't going to be the case for him this last season. So maybe Miami finds a use for him this year, but I can't imagine he's a guaranteed rotational player based off how he played last season. And then Drew Smith, you're probably like, wait, AVC, this guy's, he's been I know this guy, he's been on the Heat before. Well, he's never really been on the full-time roster, so it's still counted as an addition. This guy does just have a standard NBA contract now. This is just another one of those gemstones that they think they've found from the G League, which could be true. The little bit we've seen out of Drew Smith, he's a guard that's pretty elite defensively, and he's had some nice offensive moments. He suffered a season-ending injury last year, but they're bringing him back anyway, so clearly the team believes in him to some extent. I guess we'll see how many minutes he ends up getting and if he's going to be healthy. But yeah, shout out Drew Smith. Welcome to the team. Now we're going to move on to more of the complete team roster asset breakdown portion of the video, where we can talk about a couple more of the guys on the team. Alrighty, back to this tab now. If you guys have been watching this series, I suppose, but also the off-season series and the ideal off-season series, you're pretty familiar with this tab. I think this tab is really cool because it kind of shows a bunch of different things. We obviously have a roster with some numbers that we can actually break down. We can talk about contracts for players. We've got a depth chart here that I'm sure nobody will get upset about because there's going to be some kid on the internet that's like, if you see Norm Powell's a shooting guard when I play 2K, I don't think he can play point guard. His ball handling is only a 78 overall AVC. What the fuck? Billy, I don't give a flying fuck about you and your 2K league. Go outside. But anyway, Norman Powell, yeah, he's there. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later. But we got a depth chart. We got salary cap numbers we can talk about here and how it applies to the team. And we've got some actual assets to talk about, but where I want to start off with things is in the actual roster itself over here. So, if you're new to the channel, AVC, what are these numbers over here? These are EPM numbers. EPM stands for estimated plus minus. It's a really, really advanced statistic that tells us, hey, this is how good somebody is at offense, defense, and then overall as a basketball player. I then take those numbers, index them, normalize them so we can get a 0 to 100 score, comparing them against everyone else in the NBA. So basically, it's like a 2K overall, Billy. You get it, you dumb fuck? That's what it means. So this is kind of a way to compare everyone else in the NBA. And because AVC's the guy that owns the basketball statistics company, I have to be the lame one to say, no statistic is perfect. It can never capture all the context that is needed to actually make an evaluation of somebody. That's the thing with being a statistics consultant, right? I'm like, well, these are the numbers. This is what the numbers are saying, but you have to be creative enough to actually tell you the whole story of what's going on. So just know there's no perfect statistic, but this one is pretty good at what it does, so we like to have it up here as an example. All right, let's start at the top. Bam Adebayo making the most money on this team. Obviously, pretty elite defensive player. Offensively, he's no slouch. This guy is a borderline all-star every single season, and one of the few good American centers that we can actually throw out there for Team USA whenever we need to put a squad together. Amazing athlete, right? We like a lot of the things that Bam can do, except when he kind of starts getting into this pseudo Joel Embiid impersonation he sometimes does, where he's like, all right, let me operate it kind of out of the high post and try to get to my midi and stuff like that, which I'm kind of like, I don't know about that as much, Bam, but I appreciate it. I wish we could break that of you a little bit. And that's where I was saying, let's figure out a more consistent role for Bam on offense again, because, man, he looked really good in some of those more hub style things. I'd like to get back to that if they could with him. But also, I'm curious to see what the Heat draw up. They've always got some unique game plans, and maybe they find a new way to use him this year. But always an awesome player to have on the team. Tyler Hero, first-time All-Star this last season. One of the best we had in the NBA offensively. There's no shot that kid can't hit at this point. A lot of the playmaking started to get better for him, which is good. That was a concern that people had. Now, you could still probably say, and I mean, I can pull up some numbers here just so that we can kind of all take a look at Tyler Hero here. One of the places we'd still like to see him improve is getting to the rim. Still kind of below average there, but it's okay. But overall, pretty effective basketball player. It was nice to see the assist percentage go up this last year. One thing you'll notice, the defensive side of things, yeah, I don't know if that'll ever really be his strong suit per se, but it could definitely get better from where it's at right now, and I think that's a way for him to become a more complete player. I know Heat fans are kind of in this point where they're like, okay, are we really going to give Tyler Hero $50 million at some point, because this type of player isn't necessarily maybe the guy you kind of want to build around, and I tend to agree with that, but for the time being, he's a good basketball player. You got a good competitive team. Hold on to him, and let's just kind of see what happens after this year. Maybe he continues to go up. I don't know. Andrew Wiggins, a name that most of you guys are probably familiar with, acquired via the Jimmy Butler deal, does have a player option at the end of this season. Still just one of the better basketball players in the NBA, man. Very consistent all around, can do a bunch of different things for your team, whether it's defensively, can be a pseudo shot creator when you really need him to, great slasher, things like that. Andrew Wiggins, just a very solid guy to have on your basketball team overall, and a very pretty team-friendly contract, honestly. Miami Heat fans, shield your eyes and ears for a second. Terry Rozier is still here, making $26 million for one more year. It, again, hasn't been pretty for Scary Terry. You'd really think that this is a place where it works for him, and who knows, maybe he bounces back this year, right? Maybe he bounces back, and we start to see some really productive Scary Terry moments again, but for the time being, it's not looking the greatest for him. Gets injured every once in a while, and then when he's there, it's just pretty rough to watch, unfortunately. But maybe he still find a trade partner. Maybe he gets bought out. Again, at the time of recording this, he's still on the roster, so there he is. Already talked about Norman Powell. Davion Mitchell was a guy that they acquired last season, and then as soon as he got to the Heat, we were like, this is totally a Heat culture guy. This just screams it. The thing that always stands out with Davion Mitchell is his defense, and then offensively, he started out really good as a rookie, and then it just wasn't really working the next 3 years after that with Sacramento and other. Where was the team he was at for a little bit? Was it Toronto? I think it was Toronto, right? And then he ends up with the Heat, and all of a sudden, towards the end of the season, dude starts going off, right? And in the playoffs and the play-in, dude was nuclear for them, making big plays, getting steals on the other end. He was awesome. Probably going to have a big role this year. They got him on a very nice contract. Talked about Fontecchio already. Nikola Jovic, who, if you haven't been watching Eurobasket at all for FIBA, always cool to see him out there kind of doing his thing. Pretty much the standard, just very solid NBA player is where he's at right now. I know Heat fans kind of want him to take another jump or whatever, but he's just consistently slightly above average at everything. Even when you take a look at some of his finer numbers here, where's Mr. Jovic on here? Right here. It's solid three-point shooter, solid mid-range shooter, solid at the rim, right? There's just nothing here that really stands out as a bad thing at all about him, and there's nothing that's all that great about him. We hope that maybe he can be more of a ball handler at times, but I'm not sure given this roster that he'll get to, but nice player to have on the team. Kel'el Ware, rookie from last season, who we briefly touched on. They did the standard Heat process thing with him, because when Kel'el was coming into the NBA, we all said, hey, this guy looks like he can be a starter in the NBA long term, but he's going to need some time to develop, things like that. We really didn't see him for the first half of the season with the Miami Heat. Apparently, Udonis Haslem was in with him, or he was practicing with him in the gym every single day, getting him ready. all of a sudden the Heat just like roll him out as like a player and he becomes a starter super quick. I'm not saying he had a perfect NBA season by any means, like he was still a rookie or whatever, but he was a pretty solid contributor for them right away. So there's no reason to think this guy's not going to keep going up. I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star, but I think you've got a very solid and competent starting center that can do a lot of things for you. He's really big, he can jump, he can step outside and shoot a little bit. There's still times where, defensively he just makes like some really bad mistakes, or he just jumps at too many pump fakes, he gets a little too block happy or whatever. But this is a guy that even took a year in college to kind of really get his bearings. Then he had a huge jump in his second year. I could see the same thing happening for him again this year. Does have a team option, they'll probably pick it up. Jaime Jaquez Jr. Yes, okay, Jaime. Kind of a rough season last year, right after what was a pretty impressive rookie campaign for a bit of an older rookie. Second year, he fell off quite a bit. This is a guy that relies a lot on his fundamentals to be a contributor out on the NBA court, and it just did not come together on either end of the court last season. Most Heat fans, from what I see, kind of just don't want him on the team already, but I think that's because Heat fans are obnoxiously hard to please at times. And yes, I'm looking at you, whoever you are, listening to this video right now, you fucking Heat fan. Just calm down. Y'all have more success than anyone else. I hope that's clear to all the other fans of teams and everything. For context, I'm a Bulls fan, right? Like, you want to talk about suffering. Oh my God, am I suffering? Because I was born in 99. I didn't get to see Jordan or anything like that. And it's been horrible since Jordan. It's been horrible. I had like 3 years of Derrick Rose, and that's it. And then one fun season with Dwayne Wade, Rondo, and Butler. That was pretty fun. Even though I knew that team wasn't going anywhere, I just liked it. But Heat fans, y'all got so much good shit, all right? Just be more grateful to the team that you got, all right? Just leave it be. You already talked about Jonas. Obviously, there's no stats for him because he is a rookie. It would be in poor interest to say that I could project those or assume those. Already talked about Drew Smith. He doesn't have a guaranteed contract, but I like to think he'll be around. Pelle Larsson, another rookie from last season for the Heat that showed a little something at time, a little bit of an outside shooter that you maybe think could bring a little bit of intensity defensively at times. Might be in for a bigger role this next season. I guess we'll see. And then Keyshawn Johnson, who really didn't play much at all last year, but he's still on the roster in very minimal attempts, was a good three-point shooter this year, so I guess we'll see. He's on the roster. If you kind of want like some averages for the team, there you go. They do have one open roster spot, which I think they'll probably keep it that way until later in the season, just to kind of maintain some flexibility. So with all that kind of being said, just taking a look at the depth chart, we really only see one center there right now. Obviously, Bam will play some center. You can go Jovic there if you really need to, but maybe could use one more big on this roster somewhere. If you take a look at kind of the forward position, you do have a lot of options here between, like, again, Bam, Jovic, Fontecchio, Andrew Wiggins. You might not feel the most confident in Jaime or Keyshawn Johnson right now, but there's some pretty solid options here. And again, by the way, first five looking really strong right now. You get to the guard spots, you got Hero, obviously. Norm Powell can play that position as well. This is what I presume they'll throw out as a first five. I don't know why you wouldn't go Norm Powell and Tyler Hero. I would say neither of them are primary ball handlers. Norman Powell plays pretty well when he is in that role, but for a championship level team, that's probably not necessarily what you want. But I think between the two of them and like some Bam offensive stuff, like I said, that's kind of why I want to get back into the like hub style stuff for this team. I think it'd be really valuable. I don't see why they don't go with both of these guys. Again, you have a few question marks kind of at the other guard spots, but then you do have a couple of interesting point guard options in Davion Mitchell and Jonas, and you really needed both of those guys probably on the team last year, but now you have them. And then Terry Rozier, maybe it works out, right? Maybe it works out and he finds something. So that's kind of a look at the roster. If we take a look at the salary cap situation itself for the team, I'm going to give my brief overview just for those of you new to the channel, because I know that a lot of you people are repeat people at this time of the year because there's not a lot of people looking for basketball content right now. But for the few people that are new, we try to explain this in every video. There's 4 levels to the NBA salary cap. Let's start with the first one, the cap line itself. The Heat have crossed that. That's why they're at a 0, right? Basically, that just says once you go over that line, you can only sign your own players for anything more than a minimum contract. Pretty simple. The luxury tax one, that's when things start to get a little bit scary, right? Basically, once you cross this, which the Heat have been able to avoid because of the Haywood Highsmith move as of right now, basically, once you cross this, your team just gets way more expensive to maintain, and each year you consecutively spend over that line. It gets more and more expensive until the point where you end up like the Heat or the Celtics, or name another team that just has had to do this offseason, but they sell off some people just because they literally can't afford to keep the team going. Then we have the first and second apron. These are newer things in the NBA that they put in place to kind of make the league more competitive, and it's worked pretty well so far. Basically, when you cross the first apron, a bunch of different things happen that I have listed out here that you can pause and read if you want to. But basically, the NBA starts to really kind of choke you out on some things. Like, you can't make these deals anymore. You can't sign these types of players. It just really restricts what you are trying to do, because presumably if you're past the apron, you're a pretty good team and they don't want you building like an ultra team, right? It's rules in place to maintain competitiveness. When you cross the second apron, which you can pause and read some stuff on there as well, it gets even harder. They're choking you out at this point. They're saying, hey, you're not doing anything else unless you're just getting worse and you're just moving on from people. Again, kind of like what the Celtics did this offseason. They moved on from like Porzingis, Drew Holiday, guys like that, and they really don't have anything to show for it because, look, they had to, right? It's kind of how it works. And again, I think it's a good thing objectively. The Heat are in a pretty good situation where they have a ton of flexibility to make moves that they want, and they should be able to duck the tax if they want to this year, which is probably a good thing considering like they're trying to win, but realistically, it's going to be tough for them. So it's probably best to try to duck the tax if you can for competitiveness sake. Just looking at their players, not a ton of tradable contracts here. Like, they've got interesting young players that people would want, but you would like to keep those guys. The guys like Bam would probably have a lot of value, but why are you moving Bam? Hero, it's kind of hard to say. Wiggins, it is a decent amount of money, but someone would be interested. Terry's a tough one to trade at this point, so it's kind of a tough one to operate with salary cap wise, so they have to be pretty careful with things, I'd say. And then just draft picks in general. The Heat don't have an abundance of things left. They do still have a good amount of their own first round picks that they can use if they need to in the right move. Hopefully this team is trying to remain flexible in case the right star player does become available, and I'm sure they would like to pounce on that. But it's not an elite group of draft picks, which, again, for a team that's always competitive and always in the playoffs, you don't tend to see that anyway. So with kind of all of that being said, just taking a look at this team, we'd like to add another big to the rotation somehow, and I think it would probably be good to try to seal up kind of this forward position here, because again, like, Jovic plays a very particular role. I don't know how we feel about Fontecchio, right? Jaime Jaquez, maybe not a guy you're super curious about long term, so I'd like to try to figure out like what kind of moves can be made to make this team subtly better going into this season, because I don't think they're going after star player this year necessarily, but I want to try to make some moves to figure that out. So let's move on to the trade ideas portion of the video. And that brings us back here to Fanspo. Fanspo, for those of you that aren't familiar, it's this really, really cool website where you can do a bunch of like mock drafts, trade simulations, all sorts of cool things with the NBA. I'm not sponsored or anything, I just think it's a really cool website, and we often use this website to execute on a bunch of different trades going on in our videos. But as great as Fanspo is, they are really slow at updating things. They don't have any of the rookies on here or anything, so all the numbers are kind of off. And so Fanspo, please, I know you're a free website and everything, please try to update it. It'd be great. We love to use you when you can. So we do have Spot Track here, which is a really cool website that they keep very detailed and up to date on all things NBA, but they have kind of a beta version of the trade machine. In our last video, it didn't quite work, but it's worked in other instances. So we're probably going to have to use this one to actually try to execute on the trades themselves to make sure that they're legal. But where I want to start is just by saying, like, okay, how much money do we have to operate? Because I think a goal should be we have to stay under the luxury tax, which we're only about $1.8 million away from, so we really can't take on more money, right? But what I'm prepared to do is to package a couple players to try to get like a better role player or something, or just a better rotation player for us, and we can do some math to kind of figure out like what we can really afford, because who's not necessary on this team, right? There is a Terry Rozier. If you could find a way to flip him, which, look, let's be honest, I'm going to try to do that, right? So there's a Terry Rozier angle. I'd like to try to figure out if there's a way to make one work, and I'm pretty sure that I can do something that's interesting. That's an option. Fontecchio is a good amount of money right here. Jaime Jaquez, $3-ish million, younger player that someone might be interested in, right? Otherwise, like, I'd like to keep Ware. I'd like to keep Jovic if possible. I'd like to keep Mitchell, Norm Powell. We're trying to keep a lot of the core guys together, so I think these these are kind of our 3 trade pieces. The first thing I want to do is just exploring cheaper options for Terry Rozier. Is there a way we can move him somewhere? And again, that somewhere is going to have to be very particular because most people aren't going to want $26 million in a not so great NBA player at the moment. But we gotta find a way to kind of make this work, right? And we've got to kind of pay somebody to take him, which I think would be ideal. I'd prefer not to have to buy him out and just have kind of dead money sitting there. So the teams that would take on a Terry Rozier are going to be not very good teams that have quite a bit of cap space, that are okay with giving up something that they might not necessarily want, right? And they'll want a draft pick for it. So the teams I can think of are the Chicago Bulls. That's probably a team that'd be interested. I don't think Toronto can really afford it. Brooklyn is always an option because they've got the cap space. The Wizards, maybe later in the season, they could be interested because they might end up buying out like a CJ McCollum or a Chris Middleton at a certain point, right? So maybe they're okay with taking in a Rozier. Then at that point, Charlotte probably could, but they bought in a lot of other things this offseason, so I'm a little bit more hesitant on that. Sacramento probably should be doing something like that, but I guess we'll see. Otherwise, like Utah's not a bad option as well. Maybe we could take something off of their hands that they don't want. I don't know who that would be, but we can try to figure it out. Okay, those are probably our options. So one of the ones that I've looked at before is between the Sacramento Kings and the Miami Heat. This one's pretty straightforward. The Sacramento Kings aren't going anywhere. Like we kind of all acknowledge that, right? It's just kind of gross what's going on here right now. They really don't need multiple seasons of like DeMar DeRozan at this point, right? I mean, if I pull up DeMar DeRozan, okay, that doesn't work. Again, it's a beta version of their app or whatever, so you're just gonna have to leave it be for now. But DeMar DeRozan doesn't necessarily need to be on this team at this point. This team's not really going anywhere. Do they really want 2 years of that? No. Do we really need a DeMar DeRozan on this team? Probably not. But would you rather just have DeMar DeRozan, or would you rather have Terry Rozier, right? If Terry's not going to be able to play for us, I'd rather just have a slightly cheaper DeMar DeRozan who I at least know I can throw out there and he's going to get me probably 20 points in a night, right? Which is not a bad thing to have. So you could make a trade like this that's pretty simple. Terry Rozier goes over to Sacramento. We include some sort of draft pick to go along with this. It's probably like a protected first round pick. Because look, like the Heat or the Kings will say, hey, DeMar's at least like a good basketball player, so he can do a bunch of things. And we're going to say, okay, yeah, wouldn't you like to free up some cap space after this year, though? It's going to be pretty hard for you guys to trade Levine and Sabonis and all these other guys, right? So why don't you just let us help you get out of cap space? That's how the negotiation will go. It'll probably get to a point where we're like, okay, you know what? We're gonna send over this 2027 kind of like first round pick or whatever as well that is protected, right? Maybe it's lottery protected, maybe it's top like 16 protected, right, for a couple seasons, and then maybe it becomes like a second round pick. I don't have the option to do that right now, but this very well could be the structure to a move like that. So that's like an idea that I think could be okay. I'd like to explore this Heat Jazz one because the Jazz really don't have a lot of like veteran guards on the team, and they could probably use one, and they don't care salary cap wise, right? And someone they really don't need is Jusuf Nurkic on their team. I couldn't understand for the life of me why he was added to this team. He is on an expiring deal though, isn't he? So we'd have to really look and think like, okay, what's the logic for getting him? Yeah, he's on an expiring deal. It wouldn't be the worst thing to just have him as a reserve big, kind of like what we were saying. And we recently made a trade with this team, so not the biggest deal in the world. KJ Martin's another one that could be interesting. He doesn't need to be on the team and his contract's not guaranteed, but okay, we could try to make something work here. Filipowski's going to get some good minutes for this team. They have a lot of other forwards. They just don't need a Jusuf Nurkic, right, on the squad. So let's do something like this. The Jazz got money to spend. We ship Terry Rozier over to there. This trade should be successful. It is. What are we going to pay them in order to make this happen? Actually, just like a second round pick, they had to give up a second round pick to go get Nurkic originally, which again was kind of a weird move. We can give that back to you if you want. Maybe it's even a pick swap more so. That could very well be the case, but that could be a pretty simple move for us to build out the backup center rotation, get Terry Rozier off the team. This is more so now like $19-ish million, right? Just for an example. And now we have a little bit more space to work with. I think that could be kind of cool. So those are some Terry Rozier angles. Just doing some math now to be like, okay, how much could we kind of go and get for the other two if we package them together? So Fontecchio plus Jaime gets you around $12-ish million. So someone a little bit less than $12 million is kind of our target now. Matisse Thybulle could be kind of interesting. I have to think about who am I giving up again. I'm giving up Fontecchio, in theory a floor spacing guy, and then Jaime Jaquez, younger forward. I don't hate the Matisse Thybulle shout here. A really elite defensive player. You guys know that he's become a better three-point shooter over the past couple seasons or whatever. Could be a really nice Haywood Highsmith replacement for us, and just a nice role player. And look, the Trailblazers just kind of don't need this guy, more likely than not. So expiring deal, we could maybe make something work there. Who else could we go get? We could bring Gabe Vincent back, where I think we're fine at that position. Okoro, I feel like the Bulls are probably going to hold on to him pretty tight now. We could go for a Maxi Kleber. There's no reason to necessarily do that, though. TJ McConnell, Royce O'Neal, it's too long on his deal. Derek Jones, no. Lonzo, Duncan Robinson. Not all these contracts are obviously up to date completely either. Duncan Robinson's on kind of a new deal now. But just looking down, seeing who else we can maybe find that could be interesting. Like if a Kelly Oubre all of a sudden is available, maybe what the Sixers want more so is just like another younger forward and Jaime on the team that they think that they could use, and Fontecchio is just kind of at a position that they don't necessarily have a ton of depth at, so this could kind of help them bolster that position. I could maybe see that, and then we go after like a Kelly Oubre. Maybe he's not having the greatest season and we think we can revitalize him or something. That could be a move. KJ Martin, not a bad one for us to go after, honestly. Again, doing another Jazz type move, but I want to explore this Thybulle one, I think, more so than anything. So let's go with the Heat. Let's go with the Trailblazers. And again, I'm trying not to make these like completely hour-long videos, but you know what it is. I think you guys like the draft or the trade portions of these. Like, hey, but by the way, give me feedback on this series, y'all, because it didn't do the greatest last year, but again, we're like 3 times the size we were now. It's a series that's during the dead point in the NBA season. I just want to know what you guys think. Are they entertaining? What could they be better? I'm going to do the whole series this summer, and if it's still not that good, maybe we'll leave it behind, but we'll see. Okay, Miami Heat. So we're trading Terry Rozier to Portland. Nope, we're not trading Terry Rozier to Portland. Excusez-moi. We are moving Simone Fontecchio over to Portland along with a Mr. Jaime Jaquez. Oh, remove. So what is this right here? So he can't be like aggregated in a contract. Interesting. Is that why it kind of like gets pissed at me for trying to do this? I had a problem last time in the video, and that could very well be the reason why. Okay, so they can't be aggregated. Is that because of like where we're currently at in the season? Because I'm kind of doing a projection of like later in the season, right? So he's $11-ish million. We could make it happen. It'd just probably have to be later in the season, right? Just to confirm, right? So let's just do this here. Send him over here. Send him over here. And now we take back Thybulle. Financially, I know that this move should work. Cool. Just want to make sure, blah, 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 blah. Cannot be traded to a team aggregate with another because 2 months have not passed since he was traded for. Okay, yeah, so that's the problem, is this is just saying, like, no, you can't do this kind of move yet. That makes sense, so just know that it would have to happen a little bit later in the season. But I think that this would be a solid enough move right here. The Trailblazers get a younger guy in Jaquez that they can work with. You got to take on Fontecchio for a year. Who cares? We get Thybulle, probably a little bit more valuable than both of them when he's healthy. So, yeah, there you go. Those are kind of my trade ideas for this team going into the season, just to help the rotation a little bit more. Let's move on to the actual rotation stuff now. Alrighty, rotation question mark. Why the question mark? I always put the question mark there just to be like, look, I'm not in on the practices or anything or shit like that. So this is just my interpretation, having watched these guys just play in NBA games or whatever, but sometimes fits look differently or whatever, and that's just why coaches go with certain lineups more than others, because they're actually watching them every day. So just know that I'm aware that there's missing context to things, right? So that I don't get comments in the comment section being like, AVC, I can't believe you don't have Drew Smith on there. Drew Smith made me so happy when he got on the court last year. Like, he's gonna be the GOAT. You don't understand, AVC. He's gonna be the fucking GOAT. I'm sure you believe that, little Keyshawn. That's what I'm naming this other kid now, because I don't want to keep calling him Billy. And we want racial diversity in my comment section, right? So there's a little Keyshawn in there that's so pissed that Drew Smith's not playing. I love to imagine. But we'll get all the other races involved too. Don't worry. That's what we do on the AVC channel. We get everyone involved. We welcome all shapes, sizes, and I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. Let's talk about rotations, right? So what we've got here as far as like EPM numbers, or these are weighted by the amount of minutes that they're playing. So we're taking these EPM numbers here and just basically saying like, hey, this person's playing 32 out of the, what is it? Is it 240 minutes total in an NBA game? Yeah, and so that's kind of how we're weighting these scores. It should be noted that, again, rookies don't have any numbers to go with them, so rookies technically weigh down your rotation because we just don't know anything about them, and I think that's kind of appropriate. If you're playing a bunch of rookies, you're not quite as sure as to what your team's going to look like, so it brings your scores down. But if you guys are curious, this is kind of where all of it's being calculated over here. This is what I'm kind of thinking for the first five. I think the first five is going to have to play a lot of minutes, y'all. I really do. It's a pretty good first five, all said and done. Like, you got a lot of good basketball players here. There's no real slouches, assuming that Kello Ware is still pretty productive next season. Davion Mitchell's going to play some starter-level minutes, though, for sure on this team, if not more. I could totally see this. And again, these are averages, right? There's going to be nights where Norman Powell has to play 38 minutes. There's going to be some where he's only playing like 27. That's just how NBA games work. I'm just assuming what like an average would be. That's what we do as coaches when we sit down and make these rotations. We're like, this is where we think on average it's going to fall. So Davion Mitchell going to be playing some starter level minutes for sure. I think he's going to be a big part of this rotation. I think Jovic is kind of just behind that. He'll kind of be the first forward off the bench, where you probably move Bam back to center, right? And you let Jovic kind of run some of that other forward spot there. I think Larson should get a decent rollout here because he's one of the few kind of guards in this team that doesn't need the basketball and he can play off the other one. So I think that could be valuable. And then you'll notice I kind of cut it off at 9 because I don't feel great going to anyone after 9. I got Yakachonis playing a very healthy, like 16 minutes as a rookie. I do think that this guy could go a lot more than that, but look, why not have him prove it? That's kind of the Miami Heat way of doing it. And I think that's a great way to do it. So we're going to bring him kind of along slowly, and I think very easily this guy could find himself a lot higher in this rotation by the end of the season. But that way we'll have a lot of times where there is a true point guard on the roster and we're switching off Norman Powell and Tyler Hero a little bit more as like the primary scorer on the court, and we can make a lot of good things happen with that. And then, again, these are kind of where our reserves are sitting currently. Now, on this next tab, this is where I try to get a little bit creative and say, like, here's some other lineups that I kind of want to see out there in their respective numbers. So this one I've got closing. I think it's important to note that closing an NBA game, I don't necessarily want the starters out there for this team. I've actually shifted Davion Mitchell back in because I think it's important to have that defensive presence on there, and I've moved Bam kind of back to his center position, taking Kello Ware off the court. I just think that that's going to be a little bit better long-term for the team. Don't make some of those maybe late-minute mistakes that Kello Ware sometimes makes right now because he's a young player. Why wouldn't he, right? So this is kind of the closing team that I want. I've got Hero Plus here. This is basically me trying to optimize Tyler Hero. You'll notice he's playing the 2 position right now with Yakachonis. I think Tyler Hero is always going to be best when he's kind of playing more of an optimal Devin Booker type role, meaning he's coming off screens, he's catching the ball, then he's able to operate a little bit more. I don't necessarily want him starting offense while he can do it to a pretty solid level. I think he's always best without the basketball first and then kind of operating. And Yakachonis can really get an offense going. So you do that combined with an Andrew Wiggins. You got Jovic for some floor spacing, and then you got Ware out there who can kind of make some things happen in terms of he could be a pick and pop guy. He can also be a guy that plays off the roll, off of setting those kind of initial pin down screens. I think that could be a really cool way way to get the offense moving away from like a Bam kind of hub thing, like what I was talking about before. So I think that could be a cool way to explore Tyler Hero and really get him going. And then we've got a defensive lineup, because this team does have the ability to throw out a pretty strong defensive team with Davion Mitchell, Norman Powell, who's an above average NBA defender statistically. Actually, Pell Larson was as well, and I think the floor spacing would be important here. Jovic, very solid there, and then Bam, a pretty nice defensive player. You could get a lot going here if you got like a simple lead, or you just really wanted to rest a couple of your players for a little bit. Like, there's a reason Andrew Wiggins isn't in. It's because I'm like, okay, maybe this is like the third quarter or something. We're just trying to hold and slow down a little bit so we can get Tyler Hero some rest, Wiggins some rest, right? Guys like that. So we can put this team out there, and they should be able to slow a lot of NBA teams down, whereas you can still run some like interesting off-ball things with a Bam kind of centered offense with Norman Powell, Mitchell, and Larson kind of out there to kind of help space the floor, make things happen. I think it could be a cool lineup. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think and what other lineup ideas you guys have. But yeah, let me know down in the comments. Okay, with all that being said, it's time to go to the standings prediction, where I'm going to tell you where I think the Miami Heat are going to finish this season. Let's get to it. Oh boy, here we are. So you guys should know by now if you've been watching the series for any amount of time. Basically, I click this button, the team appears where I'm predicting they're going to go. And now look, probably going to be wrong with a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of factors at play still into things, but this is just my prediction. I think it's kind of a fun thing to do. I put together my, I guess, predictions on where they're going to fall like a week ago. Okay, let's get into it. Drum roll, please. I've got the Heat finishing with the 7th seed in the East. I know. Heat fans, this would be not very fun for you guys. And it's kind of realistically where I think that they're going to be. I do think they got better this offseason. I really think that they do. But I think still not having like a true, like clear point guard option right away. Maybe by the end of the season, I think Jonas has a decent chance of being there. I really, really do. But I think that's always going to limit the team a little bit in how much offense it can create. And I just don't know if they've got the depth to really make a big impact out there either. Like, their starting rotation is pretty good. As soon as you kind of go to this bench, it's not the sexiest thing in the world, and I'm a little bit worried about it. But the Heat do tend to find a way, and that doesn't mean that because the Heat are like the 7 seed or something, they sneak into the playoffs. I'm always going to tell you that team can go make the conference finals. I know they don't have Jimmy anymore, and that's a big reason why they were able to in recent seasons, but this team just always finds a way to kind of outcoach people and outmatch people, and they find a diamond in the rough somewhere, so I think it can happen. A lot of people seem to think that the Heat might be trying to make a play next year or something and try to go get a big stud. Maybe that's the case, but you never know when those people become available anymore, so I don't know, but that's where I've got the Heat for now. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Don't leave me a dumbass comment that's just like, AVC, I can't believe this guy, or you had them ranked here, blah, 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 LeBron's the GOAT. What? People leave dumbass comments and stuff like that all the time. If you guys are ever curious, you guys should go read my comments section rules that I have in the description. I do it for a reason, because I'm trying to make this place not like goddamn Twitter. I hate Twitter. But anyway, appreciate you guys for tuning in as always. Again, this series is going to be up Monday through Friday for the next 6 weeks, dropping at 6:30 a.m. Central Time. So hopefully a nice way for you guys to get through your day leading up to the NBA season. But I appreciate it as always. Let's move on to the comments of the video. Alright, y'all, comment to the video is coming from our 10 young NBA players to trade that kind of already need a change of scenery or whatever. Kind of a cool video, but the comment to the video is coming from True Love 24617 here, who I think left a nice in-depth comment that said, not to be the Bryce Sensabaugh guy, I didn't know there were Bryce Sensabaugh guys, but I think if they don't give him some run this season, just trade him. No Juzang, no Clarkson, opens up some time for him. Hopefully it just feels like it hurts Hardy to play him, even though he's shown good flashes of offense, which is totally true. He's been pretty solid offensively in his career up to this point, and he has the tools for defense, so hopefully he develops more. Yeah, Sensabaugh is an interesting one for the Jazz. Yeah, young guy. There's not many guys at his position right now, so hopefully he gets the chance to kind of be something for the team this year. Yeah, offensively there's stuff there. Defensively he's pretty rough right now, and I know Hardy really values like defense and guys that can put it together on that side of the court because it shows some discipline, and that's important for young guys, but I just like the conversation being started here. So thank you very much, True Love, and thank you for bringing some love to the comment section. As always, if you guys want to have some more in-depth basketball conversations, go join my Discord. Link is here in the description. It's free. You'll also find the link to my season preview sheet right here. Again, it'll be in the announcements channel. And if you guys were curious, yeah, here's my rules to the comment section or whatever. Fun stuff that we're doing to try to keep this community clean, because I do remove motherfuckers that are just being stupid, because I don't got time for this, and I don't need this YouTube channel to have 1 million subscribers if I don't want it to. So I don't need all y'all's comments. I really don't. But it's my favorite thing when y'all actually get it talking. So thank you very much for those of you that do. And again, so share, subscribe, love these videos, or hate them, I guess, and let me know why in a constructive way. But anyway, have a great rest of your week, y'all. Videos coming all week. Thanks so much. Bye.